In 1989, Ronald Reagan started a tradition that has been with us ever since. On the Friday morning of January 20th, in his final moments as president in the Oval Office, he sat at the resolute desk and put pen to paper to offer lessons and blessings to his successor. On a writing pad whose letterhead read, "Don't let the turkeys get you down," he wrote a note to George Bush Sr., suggesting that though a rough road may lie ahead, he would treasure their friendship and keep him in his prayers. And the next day, when President Bush opened the desk and read the letter, he said that he felt both touched and a sense of steadiness in the presidency. He felt his predecessor's empathy and a confidence that the responsibilities of his new and unique office could be shouldered with success and humility. So when he left office, he wrote a note to his successor and left it in the resolute desk as well. But unlike his predecessor, this letter was not written to his vice president after 8 years in office, but to his opponent after a single term and an intense campaign. And what remains to this day among the most noble and gracious gestures written in defeat, Bush said to Bill Clinton, "I wish you great happiness here. Don't let the critics discourage you or push you off course. I am rooting hard for you." And in that spirit, Clinton wrote a note to George Bush Jr., who in turn wrote a note to Barack Obama, who in turn left a letter for Donald Trump, who in turn, we're told, left a letter for Joe Biden. Any position of leadership can feel solitary, and though surrounded by staffers and advisors and soldiers and speechwriters, friends, enemies, and the press, the American presidency is evidently one of the loneliest vocations on earth. The pressures of steering a restless nation while protecting its economic interests and its military interests and defending the values which represent the best of the Western tradition can crush the most resilient of spirits. So we can imagine how a single, simple gesture on the part of a predecessor can alleviate the loneliness and bestow a sense of hope that only one president can give the next. Which leads us to a moment that we read this morning where God orders our first national leader to leave something for his successor. Kach lecha et Yeshua ben Nun, God tells Moses to take Joshua, v'samachta et yadcha alav, to lay his hands upon him, v'amadata oto, and to stand him before Elazar the priest, before the whole people, v'tzivita oto le'neihem, and to instruct him before the nation. But beyond the personal hand-laying initiation and the public inauguration, there was one more component of this transfer of power. God added, "V'natata mehodecha alav," give him some of your splendor. And while almost every one of the commentators sees this splendor as a necessity for Joshua's success, giving him esteem and respect in the eyes of a skeptical people, this is our question. Why is this bequest only partial? Why is Moshe commanded to share only some of his splendor? In the words of our sages, Mehodcha, God says, give of your splendor, lo kol hodcha, not all of your splendor. Surely, following in the footsteps of Moses, the man who went from Egyptian prince to Hebrew prophet, the man who unseated an emperor, split a sea, and revealed God's law, Joshua needed as much help as he could possibly get. So why does heaven handicap him by having Moshe hold back some of his grandeur? Why does he not insist that Moshe give his successor all the splendor at his disposal? And there are two answers to this question that I'd like to share with you today, both of which begin by defining what exactly splendor is and why Joshua at the start of his tenure should be denied it. And we start with an old favorite, with the Malbim. And for him, hod, or splendor, is what he calls hayofi hapnimi hanafshi'i, an inner sense of spiritual presence which manifests in divine assistance and supernatural power. So for Malbim, Moshe being suffused with this kind of splendor meant that he was blessed with God's undivided attention. And one who can wield the divine will can shatter shields, seize cities, and bring even sworn enemies to heel. So under Moshe's lead, our national conquest would have been smooth and swift and easy. In fact, for the Malbim, it would have been too easy. In the 1950s, Leon Festinger observed what he called effort justification, a phenomenon that Dan Ariely and others have since called the IKEA effect. We tend, they say, as people to attribute more value to objects when we've contributed to their construction. We tend to protect objects more when we know that we've participated in their production. So here, on the eve of our national autonomy for the Malbim, heaven insists that Moshe deprives his successor of the means to succeed with too much ease, to endure, to be more secure. Our national project and our ancestors' success would need to depend on the strength of those who know that without conviction, they could lose. We would need to rely on tense diplomacy, on battlefield courage and self-effacing bravery. Our independence to persist would need to be hard won. And read this way, Joshua's short-term deficit was a long-term gift, despite the exertion that his lack of splendor would cause, or more precisely because of it, his legacy was more likely to live on. But there is a second reading of this counterintuitive Mosaic gift which looks less through the lens of Joshua's long-term legacy than his ability to lead the people right now. For the 20th century commentator Rabbi Zalman Sorotskin, the weight of every grievance and complaint, of every struggle that Moshe ever faced as a leader can be traced to a single tragic truth, that Moshe, for no fault of his own, was too remote. His was a soul of supreme splendor, enveloped by the divine presence, defined by a clear conscience, and his moral excellence, his effortless eloquence, his prophetic eminence all made him seem aloof and unreachable to the people. This perfect prophet was not a man who the people could relate to or confide in. To them, he was an angel and they were base. He was a saint and they had failed time and again. And this radical gap between leader and people made the nation tense and unstable. So for Rabbi Sorotskin, Moshe denying his successor his unique level of splendor was not a disservice, but a gift. In his words, Zeh na'aseh letovato, it was done for his good. It was a spiritual limitation which allowed him to feel the needs of the people that he would lead. When they complained, he would be able to relate to their pain. When they feared, he would feel their fright. When they prayed, he would share their plight. Moshe, says Rabbi Sorotskin, was an Ish Elokim, a man of God, but specifically because of that, he was not a man of the people. And if Joshua was to succeed in leading a people into war and building a nation from the floor up, he would need to be a man of the people. At the core of Jewish thought lies the pursuit of the perfected self, but more important than perfecting the self is healing the other. More important than soaring on high is improving the lives of our peers, hearing their cries, addressing their fears, inspiring their faith, and giving them space to thrive. Sometimes our dreams can blur our vision. Sometimes our personal ambitions can inhibit our true mission. We ought to try as hard as we can to transcend our flesh and polish our souls. But sometimes our splendor comes second to our responsibility. Shavua Tov.